Are going to continue our discussion on electric bikes. S66. We got cut short the other day, and so I'd like to continue our discussion. Anthea, are you with us this morning? Well, who would like to start off the discussion from?
I think we kind of, Alex was testifying and we kind of had to shut him
Okay.
down
right.
prematurely. I don't
All
know,
right,
maybe if he has.
Let's continue
more.
with you, Alec.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and members of the committee. I don't have a lot left. We got through quite a bit last time, so I'll keep the rest of my remarks fairly brief here and try to be responsive to some of the issues that had come up in the questioning beforehand. I believe where we left off were some brief remarks about the differences between electric bicycles and other types of powered motorcycles or mobility devices, just to give you some imagery about what these products look like relative to some other things that are out there. And the last piece that I had really wanted to touch on was the issue of trail access, and I know some questions about non-motorized facilities had come up earlier. And in working on these bills, we've taken a very concerted approach of not making these bills about preemption, but really trying to put more of a backstop into state law with default rules about where e-bikes can go, but always subject to change by the municipality or the county or the state agency that has jurisdiction over these non-motorized areas, because they're all unique. It's very hard to craft a single state rule that could possibly accommodate the differences in the specific characteristics of the trails and the types of users that are out there on them. So we've very deliberately not taken that approach and really just tried to create a reasonable set of baseline rules for e-bike riders to have on bike paths. And then there's one additional provision that's specific to the mountain biking, hiking type trails. And the goal of this provision is to just say, we're not touching it with this transportation law. The land managers with jurisdiction over those areas, whether they be local or state, those are their trails, and they need to make rules for those trails for e-bikes. And so any sort of default access that might be permitted in state law is not applicable to those areas. So, I know there's important tourist destinations like the Kingdom Trails that have their own, concerns about how to manage access, and we do not want to get into the fray of those issues. Those need to be sort of resolved on a more of a case by case basis. And that work is absolutely happening in the neighboring jurisdiction to Denver. That's the largest mountain bike area in Colorado. They've used this class system to do exactly what I'm talking about here, specify where class 3 can go, where class 2 can go, and then they have a very large mountain bike network. So they've made the decision to allow class 1 there. But again, that's not a state law. That's a local determination that they get to make.
What basically does this bill try to address? This is where bikes can legally go or don't go, electric bikes, or is it? I'm trying to get the picture. What are we trying to address in this piece of legislation? Yeah.
Let's try and come back and I think distill to the big picture. That's an excellent question.
Right.
I think 3 things. Define what an electric bicycle is based on what a consumer actually walks into a bike shop and sees, so that the bike that's labeled a class 2 is also called a class 2 in the law, and they know exactly what they're allowed to do and how their product's regulated. Second, it's to tell you what an e-bike is not. It's not these other types of vehicle classifications, so that there's no confusion about that issue. We've had this exact concern raised in some states where if we didn't carve e-bikes out of a term, in Colorado, for example, our agency had questions about whether an e-bike should be regulated as an off-highway vehicle if it was intended for off-road use. And they said no, but it would have been better to clean that up in the statute. And they expressly told me they wish we had. And then the third thing is to provide these rules on what their rights and duties are and where they can go. So you are regulated like a bike rider. You're subject to this limited set of additional rules. And here are the places you're allowed to take your bike.
Okay. Yes, Senator Chittenden.
So I'm going to talk about South Burlington again, not to be parochial, but from my South Burlington City Council role, will say that we have had confusion with these new ped assist bikes, these hybrid type things as to what can go on our bike paths and what can't. So I see the merit in clarifying this language. I don't know if we have talked to municipalities and whether or not this language addresses their concerns, but I think having something in statute, to your question, Senator Mazza, will be useful for the local towns to be able to say e-bikes as defined in this way, and then also we need good visuals so that people know what can and can't go on our rec paths legally and so on. But
Does anyone know if the league and cities and towns should be involved in this discussion? Or, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out where we go to get anybody can help me on that. I appreciate it.
So, Senator Mazza, if I may, we've
Yes.
Taken great care to explicitly state in the language of the bill that if a municipality wants to regulate e-bikes in any way, they absolutely have the authority to do that. So it provides for the process for how they would go about managing that process. And as Alex pointed out, this is just a backstop to clarify that they actually explicitly do that, have that authority.
Okay. Yes, Senator Kitchell.
Well, it seems like since we're talking about municipalities and they can regulate, we should at least have, I don't know if it's Karen Horn or who their transportation, but it seems like we at least should hear directly from them. I'm also, when we were doing the other what is and is not, is there a DMV connection here at all, or is this totally outside their area of jurisdiction? And I mean, I'm relating because obviously they did come in on, I believe, the moped legislation. So I'm just wondering what department or agency in state government has an interest in the bill. I'm kind of struggling with where that might be.
Right. So I shared the language before the session or very early on in the session with DMV, and they did not provide any feedback either way to us on a position. It is located, the language itself is located within the DMV statute.
Now, if you have a regular bicycle and you go through downtown Burlington and you're in the traffic lane, right with the traffic, and you have an electric bicycle, are they both the same, treated the same way? You have the same right of way or rights right now at both with electric or regular bike?
That would be our intention with this bill, yes.
So you have a right on the highway the same as an automobile presently?
I don't know. I don't know if there are any limitations on motor assisted bicycles as defined in the current statutes. It wouldn't surprise me if there were perhaps a restriction on interstates. There's often a restriction on interstates.
Yeah, interstate. Yeah, the interstate would be off limits, but I just wondered about because
Also restricted access highways. There are certain sections, for example, of Route 2, which is 3 lanes, that it's not only bicycles, it's farm equipment, et cetera. There's a list of what's not permitted to use that section. And you have to go around on the old route. I guess if we could, Senator Chittenden, maybe your question will help. It's like, why is this needed? What will it do? And who will it benefit? And who should we hear from? And I think as a courtesy, we should at least hear from the league to say, yeah, they like that provision or they'd like it reworded or whatever. And I know time is kind of the essence here. So that's sort of what I'm struggling with.
So I'm not a co-sponsor of this, so I'm not trying to make your case, Alex and Dylan, but if you can tell me if this is an incorrect perception of why this is needed. I see confusion between motorbikes and e-bikes, and your visual yesterday, I was really visualizing how an e-bike is a certain weight class. It really looks like a bike. It's really just a ped assist bike. And that way we can start to have rules and clear guidelines for where these bikes can go, which is similar to other bikes. And that's different and distinct from motorbikes, which are bikes with motors that can go much faster speeds, weigh a lot more. And so it's clarity in our statutes for both safety purposes as well as guidelines for municipalities. Is that some of the impetus for this that we're trying to achieve?
Absolutely, Senator.
Yes, absolutely. I think eliminating that confusion is critical. Also, to the point of, I think if we don't put a proper framework in state law to define these products and create some baseline rules, the local governments are going to start regulating themselves. And from our standpoint, and I think from the standpoint of a lot of users too, they'll end up in kind of a confusing situation if the local governments are not using the same types of terminology. And so this gives everybody that framework to speak the same language, so that even if, the regulations differ a little bit from town to town, we're all still talking about the same thing. And so I think for that reason, the definitions in state law are particularly critical.
You don't want city councilors setting these rules, let me tell you right now.
I know in Chittenden County, some areas are all marked off with bike lanes and others aren't. And so it's kind of confusing because some are just right in with traffic and others like Burlington has some areas that's just bike lanes and only. And then other areas it's wide open to us. I'm just wondering what we're trying to do or how maybe we do have to discuss this tomorrow with the League of Cities and Towns or someone or some communities or MPO or somebody.
Even if we got a written statement from the league saying they've reviewed it and they,
Okay.
if they can't come in, it seems like
Right.
it would be good to know that they've reviewed the language and they viewed that it would be helpful. I think Senator Chittenden's experience with local government is indicative of whether this would be helpful to get consistency. And there's a sort of a reference within the statutes that differentiate between what is a growing array of whether it's what's a moped, what's a scooter, what's a e-bike, what are the limitations on any of them. If they have the ability to regulate, it seems like it's helpful to have some identification of what is subject to their regulation and the differentiation that they may want to make.
Because you can't ride a bicycle on a sidewalk, can you? There's some areas you can, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
I believe you're not supposed to ride bicycles on sidewalks.
Okay.
No, you have a right to use the road.
Yeah.
And just like a lot of our US highways, I mean, that's why we've been trying to do more work on the sides and to give more room for either cleaning. Well, we've been cleaning the sides as well, but also trying to get more shoulder room for that reason. So, I think the big concern is what is motorized, non-motorized, and sort of some of those safety, just like you're talking about, use of sidewalk. So I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Senator.
No, I was going to say, to me, one of the first things we could either do is have Anthea, or I know she's not listening, or I don't know, Liz, if we could communicate with the league and just get some affirmation that they would find this legislation helpful, and or if they've got a problem, we should know about it.
Okay, that's good. I think that's the source we should go to. They do represent the towns. And so we get some general consensus of what we're doing. Okay,
Liz just asked, should she try to get the league on the line now?
that'd be great if you could.
If
Sure.
they're available, I
Sure,
don't know if
yeah.
they've seen the language or whether they're tracking it at all.
Okay, yeah, maybe
But
they're
they
surprised.
should, because the title of the bill is motor vehicles, electric bicycles, e-bikes, motor assisted bicycles, and municipalities. So I would think the term municipalities would be a triggering word for them to have at least looked at the bill.
Okay,
I like that, other than muscular power.
you
I
must
think
have
that's
this issue in South Burlington, or Senator Chittenden. I'm sure it must come up at your meetings occasionally about bikes or,
Yep, and we have rec paths and sidewalks, so that was the point I was gonna
Right.
raise. What's the difference? And it's not clear to both the pedestrians. As much as you're not supposed to ride on the sidewalks, kids and their families, they're not gonna
Right.
be out Route 2 or Route 7. So they still do ride on the sidewalk, so. I think the clarity about what an e-bike is and its weight class with visuals is valuable to achieve some consistency, because I'd hate for an e-bike to mean something different in Winooski than it does in Burlington and in South Burlington. So having municipalities collect or codify and agree to certain standards through the state legislation, that makes a lot of sense.
I didn't think we were doing weight, Senator Chittenden, because it was more the power, which would then determine, sort of drive the weight. But,
For me, that was answered in the testimony yesterday about the speed. So basically, by not going faster than a certain speed, that translates to a weight limit. But I'd love to hear more from Alex and
no, the exact question for Karen is, has she looked at S66 and does the league have a position? Particularly, can you cite, Dylan, the section that our municipalities can regulate?
Yes, I'll find that for you right now.
Okay, and because I think that's what we're asking Karen to tell us. Is this helpful?
you got a lot of problems with e-bikes up in Newport with Center Ingalls.
I saw one once.
They-
In
well,
the same,
they gotta get some roads to drive on first.
yeah, I saw one once, but I saw a Bigfoot the same day.
People who
So
have
if-
them love them. But it's just this balance between what is motorized or that non-motorized, and for people who are walking or or even sometimes now with they're out in winter, could be cross-country skiing, you name it. So I guess.
So Senator Kitchell, it's if you look on page 5 and 6 of the bill as introduced, beginning at the bottom of page 5, that is where the language that addresses municipal authority is addressed.
Are we working still on the original bill, or did Anthea do something different to the bill? Or
No, I think we're just as introduced.
Okay.
So I guess that's what we're asking Karen to take a look at.
Yeah.
That section on, it'll be section 6. I mean, it
Yes,
starts on
section
page
6.
5 and goes through.
Yes, section 6.
So I'm reading it now, and I will say, as a city councilor, this would be helpful. I don't know if this clarity already exists, but to know that our municipality can set restrictions on these new class definitions on types of bikes on our rec paths and our bike and our sidewalks. So it's a
Well,
valuable.
it says class 3. They could prohibit the class 3. Right?
I see
Okay.
this number 2 talks about class 1 and class 2, where we can have jurisdiction, and then number 3 talks about class 3. So there's some difference between the two, but we can.
Yeah, there could be an outright prohibition of class 3.
They can't do that now without legislation, is that correct?
There's no definition of the
Okay.
different
Okay.
bike classes.
All right, okay.
I think they're probably all lumped in, or, a bike is a bike.
I'm sorry. I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
have to go get my Raleighs back from my son.
And on the sidewalk piece, on line 17 of page 5 of the bill, sidewalks are not one of the areas identified where e-bikes can be ridden. So that was also deliberate, because our perspective generally is that sidewalks are not the right place for bicycles. They should either be in their own infrastructure or on a safe roadway where they make sense.
Do we want to invite Senator Campion or Senator Westman, the sponsors of the bill? Are they available? Is that something that we would usually do, Senator Massa?
That's a good idea. He was in the
Well,
other day, Campion, but maybe we should have Westman in. He was co-sponsor, and that would be That would be great. I forgot about that. We should do that. Is there any way we can get him, Liz?
Is this model legislation? I'm just wondering, it seems to me what we're dealing with here potentially is from Senator Campion. He was reading this article about what other states have done. And so I was thinking that what we may have here, and I don't know if Anthea drafted it, but I would suspect that it's model legislation that is being requested of either implemented in other states or being considered or being advocated for.
Well, we've got time tomorrow if we want to take it up tomorrow and get more folks in and talk about it and get this thing done with.
Yeah.
That's
I think it's,
It is a model. Sorry.
oh, I was going to say, I think it's probably helpful. My impression would be, it would be helpful to municipalities or any entity that are trying to differentiate or set conditions to have a consistent definition. So I don't know if we need a lot more. What we need is affirmation from the people involved that what we think is helpful is indeed the case. Unless Senator Chittenden is, I am unanimous in this, huh? As the old saying goes.
If we want to hear from a municipal person that knows bike issues, I'd be happy to introduce you to Paul Connor from South Burlington. He would be able to speak to the value of this language. But
Well, it might do some good to check with them and see if we can't get, so we can, I think it's a good piece of legislation, but we just want to make sure we touch base with everyone. And
We don't even need testimony. All we need is say, take a look
Right,
at this section
right,
and,
right.
or take aware of this bill and just confirm that you would view it as helpful.
you can ask Richie today about it, Jane, when you see him.
Okay, I'll ask him.
That would be helpful. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just see that this is a market that's going to continue to expand. More people are,
No doubt about that.
even some of our colleagues have e-bikes and they love them. And I just see that that there is going to be an expanding market and presence. So it's now a good time to get definitions in place more in a prospective way.
Okay, well, we have our next item, as you know, from yesterday's continuation is it's at 11 o'clock about S47. I think we're making progress. And the only issue I have with S47 this morning is Wanda got a hold of us and couldn't make it from DMV. She's in a very important meeting at 11 o'clock. So I said that we would discuss our items this morning at 11, but let her have a chance to testify tomorrow, if that's all right with the committee, because I want to do this today and wrap it up. But so at that, I think what we'll do is we'll have our discussion of some of the items we're discussing yesterday, and then wait for Wanda testimony tomorrow morning to because I want to give her the opportunity. Yes, Senator Perchlik.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we're getting DMV in it since we're asking them to do something in the bill.
Right.
But I hope that we could hear from, just if they could give us a heads up if they want any changes. I just wouldn't want them to come in and.
Yes, well, her issue was briefly this morning when she called that they were asked to do quite a bit, and she had not met with her staff to see if they could accomplish what the request was. I guess it involved a lot of research or I don't know the language that we asked them to do. Do you know exactly what we're asking them to do?
I mean, I don't see it as a lot of research, but so that would be good if we need to clarify. But they have to accept any requests that come to them from the dealers or others on the study language, and then they have to report to us. But I guess I'll look at it again.
Okay.
I thought it was mainly they're just reporting back on what the requests are for us to deal with, not they have to do all the research and figure it all out.
It was more of a collection
Okay.
point.
Maybe
rather
she
than-
didn't understand it completely, but she wanted a chance to meet with her folks to make sure that she was
Yeah.
getting into something that she could accommodate. That's
Mm-hmm.
basically it. So I said, sure, I'll give you the opportunity
Yeah.
to come tomorrow. At 11 o'clock, we can continue to discuss the other items with the dealers. I think the dealers will be with us this morning, I think. And Senator Perchik, you have worked with them yesterday or today or whatever. So unless there's anything else, we have nothing until 11 o'clock.
Oh, good. I can go to the post office.
Yep, you can go to the post office.
Pete the cat.
Okay. Anything else? And then we'll
Or
get our
think-
information. If anybody get information on this bike issue, so we can wrap this up tomorrow also.
Yeah.
If we have any testimony. It sounds like there's just some minor things for some adjustments. It's just to make some confirmations that everybody's on board with it. So, okay.
I'll give
All
a
right.
heads up to Anthea to answer clearly on what we're asking DMV to do on that.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe if someone gets a chance to get a hold of Wanda today, that's fine. She had a meeting at 11 o'clock with the administration or something that she couldn't get out of. So, but she just wanted time to talk to her staff. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
see everybody at 11. Thank you.
Thanks.